Everyone's looking at me.
I don't have anything.
I'll go first. So I think the BOCC continues to really focus on livability and affordability. Sustainability of our community has long been a focus and continues to be. That breaks down in a number of different ways. Certainly housing is a key focus of ours and will continue, I think, for most of our terms to be a key focus. We have done a number of things on the housing front. We have 6 construction projects, starting with Bill's Ranch, working our way through Keystone, the U.S. Forest Service, Wintergreen, one little one in Summit Cove, and then over, obviously, to the Larkspur, which we are filling right now. It's very exciting. And then back to Lake Hill. We do have a coffee for Lake Hill coming up really soon, so I encourage you all to attend one of those events as well. We also have done 3 hotel conversions, and those hotels continue to have very long wait lists of folks, in addition to Larkspur, which obviously had 1,000 applicants for the 52 units that we have. We've also done a lot of things around our code and zoning to try and make it easier for private developers, including making significant changes to our ADU code, and offering a stock lending library of plans to make it easier for folks to build, and also offering grants for folks who want to build ADUs on their properties. So we have a multi-pronged approach to housing, but as anyone who has read our most recent housing needs assessment knows, we have a long way to go before we bring back the number of folks to our community that need to live here to support our economy. So that's the housing front. No, you guys want to talk about something else?
Yeah, great way to kick it off. I just came back from NACO last week. NACO is the National Association of County Organizations, so it's the meeting of all the county commissioners across the country. Big topics of conversation, especially for those of us in these rural resort communities: wildfire, resiliency against wildfire, and then insurance. In order to maintain that insurance, it's getting more and more difficult for all of us in these rural resort communities that have high wildfire risk. We don't seem to understand what is the through line to the cost of insurance and the risk, even if we do a lot of mitigation. We have done millions of dollars of wildfire work, and unfortunately that doesn't seem to be enough to give us affordable insurance rates. So that was a big topic of conversation. We discussed a lot with other counties that are similar to us, our U.S. Forest Service project, because it is the first in the country. And so that was a big topic of conversation that we had during NACO as well. And yeah, that's kind of where I was. You want to talk about CAST, maybe?
Yeah, I can't even remember. It was so long ago. My memory lasts like 3 days, but like a goldfish. I am the newest member of the commission, and even though I
remember that part,
that part I remember. Even though I spent 20 years as council and mayor of Breck, this is a different job, so I'm spending a lot of time drinking from the fire hose right now and asking questions. So, I just wanted to follow up with something Commissioner Pogue said about the housing shortage. And oftentimes when we get studies back, I can be dismissive because the numbers seem so ridiculous sometimes, but we had over 1,000 applicants for 30 spots at the Larkspur. So I don't think there's any doubt that the number is considerable, and we seem to meet with a lot of resistance, probably more so at the county level than I did at the town level, building some of these projects with either neighbors or other municipalities, and it's a shame. But that's, I think, one of the things that the 3 of us are really focused on, is getting some of that stuff done. And I get it. I mean, having been with a municipality and living in a neighborhood myself, I understand the reluctance by some people to have, housing or increased density in their neighborhoods. But it really is important for the community, and if you don't want to take the livelihood and soul of your community as the impetus to build housing, then take the economic part, because without workforce housing, we have a lot of places in the community that would close. So I will end with that.
Maybe I'll just say the other, I think, area of focus for all of us has been on physical infrastructure, particularly roads.
Yes.
There is nothing I hear more from folks than potholes or stop signs or traffic or all of those things. So You know, the counties have some very unique funding mechanisms for roads that makes it really hard for us to be able to pay for a lot of these big projects. But we are really committed to trying to move from a D grade, which is what we currently get, to, you know, closer to a C grade. But that will take a lot of resources, and some of you may have read Swan Mountain, and the repaving of Swan Mountain was a high priority for us. In order to do that project, which we estimate will be about a $24 million project, we do need significant funding from the state, and unfortunately the state moved back the grants that we were looking at funding it. So Swan Mountain will be a priority for 2025 once we know whether or not we'll get those grants. In the meantime, we have 6 smaller projects that we're looking at doing this summer. Everything from Dillon Valley and repaving Straight Creek up to, I think it's Boreas, if I'm right, and some smaller projects around Boreas. So just also wanted to mention that as a continuing priority for us. And happy to talk about why county funding of roads doesn't make a lot of sense if people want to get into the weeds, but I will leave it at it's a bit of a challenge.
Questions?
Yeah.
Hi, Ron Carlson, Frisco. I've lost track. Where are we as far as ADUs on existing? Well, I know you've liberalized for new projects, but when I got here 35 years ago, I swear half the people I knew lived in bandit units. Then the county and the towns made all this effort to get rid of bandit units.
Yeah.
So now we have a housing shortage. I'm not aware of any changes that would let existing homeowners in existing single-family zones do an ADU in their houses. Is there any change in that?
Yeah, we have significantly changed all of our zoning as it applies to ADUs in existing houses. There are still health and safety requirements, certainly, but if you have looked at it, 10 or 20 years ago, I would encourage you to reach out to our planning department again and see whether or not there might be something. The grants can be used for existing ADUs that you might want to retrofit in addition to new construction.
Like it's when I finished off my garden a couple years ago, they made sure I took out the old dryer plug I had because it might be used for a stove.
Yeah, I'd like to think that planning has evolved over the years, for sure. Jan?
I'm sorry, Jan from Silverthorne, and are there any plans or is there land designated now for affordable housing? Yes?
Yes.
I'm sorry I was late because of
Oh, no worries. Yes, there are a couple plots that we have identified for affordable housing. It's just a matter of whether or not, as you know, a lot of these developments take a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of financing. So, and as we are currently doing these 6 projects, it'll be it's not difficult, but it's a pacing thing, We've got we've got some plots identified, but we just haven't, and it'll be a co-project with the town of Silverthorne. So we're still in the process of negotiating that, and that's still don't want to put any thoughts in anybody's head before, we get through the many negotiations and the current projects that we have right now.
I mean, the largest land available for an affordable housing project across all the towns of the county is currently Lake Hill. That's a 35-acre parcel. So, we've had a lot of conversations with town of Frisco and Frisco Sanitation lately, and I think the fact that we're doing these 2 town halls at the end of the month is an indication that we're finally starting to make progress. Town of Frisco has the water application in front of them right now. And similarly, we're working with Frisco Sanitation on an engineering study to look at what the sewer needs and capacity would. But that is the single largest plot of land remaining. We also have the U.S. Forest Service project, which is over in Dillon. We hope to break ground on the infrastructure for that this summer, but that is somewhat dependent on Dillon's willingness to partner with us over water. So more to come on that one.
What about, and I would even do this for you. So I live in Silverthorne, right above me is the Angler Mountain multi-million-dollar homes. And what if you approach the developers who are making a ton of money and ask them to donate 1 plot of land, okay, and to build 2 tiny homes on it?
So we often have conversations with developers about the impact of their development, and and need to build affordable housing. And some of the jurisdictions like Breckenridge, for example, have what's called inclusionary zoning. When a developer develops, they have to market rate, they also have to develop affordable housing as part of that. I think, the conversation that's been happening with BGV lately is an example of that. Certainly the Keystone PUD requires Vail Resorts to develop a certain number of units per their total employee base. So there are lots of conversations like that. We also have a program that lets us do a density swap with developers. So if a developer wants to develop a parcel like Angler Mountain, they have to offset that density in some way for affordable housing, and often they'll swap it for a different parcel, right? So they'll put the affordable housing on one parcel and then the market rate on another. So there are lots of ways we have those conversations with developers. I would also say increasingly, I think our business community recognizes that this is not just a problem for government to solve, and we're seeing lots of new employers like the hospital, for example, right? They're developing the old hospital site for affordable housing. So we're seeing lots of those things happen as well. But I'm always happy to have the conversation with any developer that wants to, because it's always important that we're looking for every opportunity.
Hi, Blair. Hi, Blair. Shovel in the ground for Lake Hill, or I'm sorry, Dillon.
Yeah, our hope is infrastructure shovels this summer, but that's very dependent on Dillon and some decisions that they still have to make.
Cool.
So fingers crossed.
Just thinking the infrastructure on our end
Yeah.
that we need to get done.
Yeah.
And then, so if the conversations, I'm sorry, again, I'm so confused. The Frisco conversations are starting to happen at the end of this month. That's exciting. Like maybe next summer, shovel in the ground? Assuming everything goes well?
I mean, 25, 6-ish, let's say.
That's, okay.
I think there's a lot to be, Lake Hill is a huge parcel, right? So a lot of infrastructure conversations to be had. In addition, we're contemplating assisted living and a childcare center. So there's a lot of pieces to that parcel that I think still need to fall in place. I think our hope is U.S. Forest Service moves first, and then Lake Hill after that.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yep.
My name is Richard Himmelstein. I'm a very small developer. I build 1 or 2 homes in Denver a year. And just looking at the cost to build up here in the mountains versus Denver, I can build under $250 a foot. And I was doing analysis up here, and it's going to cost me over $600 a foot. It's just really shocking, the difference. And one thing I wanted to talk to you about is I own a parcel, and I was interested in developing it for affordable housing. I approached the town of Breckenridge to annex it, and the town of Breckenridge has the right to do whatever they want in an annexation. And there's electrical wires going across the front of the property. They wanted me to pay for undergrounding that, and basically the cost just became not prohibitive to move forward with them. And I estimate if I did it through the county, if the county supported it, it would still cost me over $1 million to build 2 workforce housing units. I've tried to get some traction with the Summit County Planning Board, and I have some history with them when I build a property up in the middle of the Breckenridge Ski Resort, so they really don't want to work with me. And I would really like to present something to the county commissioners, one or all of you. I'll give you a very detailed proposal about what I'm describing and see if I can get some traction with you guys, because I actually respectfully disagree with the planning board's position on why they say I can't build what I want to build, which is workforce housing or affordable housing.
I have my opinions on the development that I'm not going to talk about here. I disagree that it wasn't all about your power lines. There are some ingress and egress issues, I think, that a lot of us on the Brecktown Council were hesitant about, Richard. But I'm happy to take a look at it again. It's okay with me.
Since Commissioner Manuel is the one who's most knowledgeable, and I'll call it negative about it, and I respect that position, I prefer to only waste one person's time and present to him, and if he likes it, hopefully he would change his position and share it with the rest of the commissioners and see if I get some traction.
I mean, it's never a waste, in my opinion, to look at the project. Happy to. Typically, we'd have our staff look at things before they come to us. We have to be very careful about looking at applications that are going to come to us so as not to prejudice the process. So we typically ask folks to meet with our housing director and our manager, Dave Rossi, first, just as a point of respecting the process, but certainly happy to engage in those conversations as our attorneys think are okay.
If I could copy,
I'll give you my card.
if I could copy him as well as Commissioner Manley,
Yep,
and just see
yep.
if we could start the ball rolling, see if it goes anywhere. And back to that, I do have a CDOT permit, and they were okay with it, but I still respect, and I'll share everything with you guys.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Keep up the good work.
Oh, I'll take a second.
Yeah,
crack
of course.
A little more esoteric. I'm of the belief that high-end home sales drive up the price at the bottom. And I know the short-term rental tax is up on, from all the letters to the editor. Have you ever thought about I would call it the equivalent of an excess profits tax, a tax for homes that are obviously not going to be part of the pool, tax for anything that's selling over, you pick a number, anything over 5 million.
It's usually referred to as a vacancy tax.
Yeah.
Sadly, counties don't have a vacancy tax authority, so that is not a tool that's available to us as counties. I do think there are a lot of conversations at the state level about giving counties additional authority that would help us balance some of that, the fact, really, if we're going to point to a single problem that drives our affordable housing, it's that 70% of our homes are not owned by people that work here locally. That really is sort of when you take that much stock for second homeowners, it creates an inherent shortage. Let's put it that way. So there are a lot of conversations at the state level about different taxing authorities that you might give to counties and municipalities that would help.
Since the Speaker of the House is a county resident,
She understands the dynamic.
Talking to her about
Yeah, but that doesn't mean she always listens.
No, she doesn't always agree with us.
No, I've sent her a few letters about some other
Yeah.
things.
Judge, don't forget too, all these letters to the editor are all well and good, but this stuff's happening at the state level. This is not a decision the three of us are making. I think you'd find completely different outcomes if it was just the three of us. This is, Tamara's been leading us at the state level, voicing county opinion, but it's still, we're one of 64 counties. So everybody in the paper can say what they want about this process. It really is not, the three of us aren't making it, it's not what we say. So,
But we certainly
No,
can
well,
continue
we do have a voice,
to voice
and
the
we
challenge.
do voice the challenges,
Yeah.
but,
It's not our
I just reading all those over the weekend, I was like, this is really, that's great,
Yeah.
okay, so,
Yeah,
Yeah, we get it.
yeah.
yeah.
But there's so many bigger, like you said, it's a very esoteric problem and it's bigger than us, and we wish that we could maybe wave a magic wand and get exactly what we need here in Summit County. But fortunately, that's not how democracy works.
There are all kinds of different approaches. I'm not saying you should do this, but I've known people to pass things and then let it be challenged in the courts and try to use it. When you can't get the legislature to do something, you use the court to do something. And it might be you don't have the authority to, if you passed it anyhow. Well, Jeff is getting near retirement age. He needs something to do.
I think Jeff's got
he is
plenty to do.
Here's plenty to do.
Jeff could take that challenge up in the courts.
He does love a good court case. Does he?
Could you guys talk about the library, North Branch Library? It's about to have its grand opening.
I'm really excited about this. We've renovated, we renovated the South Branch, we've renovated the main branch, and the last one is the North Branch. It should open any day now. We're just waiting on our final
Thursday?
approvals.
This
Thursday.
Yes.
It's exciting.
That is exciting.
it will have more community space than it has had before, which I'm also really excited about. But I think it will continue. I mean, that library, again, has always been a hub for the community, and I think it will continue to be that hub with just some nice bells and whistles that we haven't had in the past. So.
I think it's already happening at the South and the main branch, but the expanded programming offerings from, what's going on there, not just, books, but more like discussions and opening up. I know our library director, Stephanie Ralph, is doing incredible work at our 2 open branches, and so we're really looking forward to what's going on in the North Branch. I'm excited. I'm a big library fan. You'll find me there quite a bit.
Cool. I think the grand, I could probably pull up the emails on my phone because I'm not friends with the library, but they're having something next week, I think.
Next Saturday.
Okay. And then the
March
big one-
23rd. Just
March
kidding. It's on a
23rd is
Saturday.
the big one, yeah.
But I'm getting my months incorrect.
Yes.
Yes.
Close.
There's the big grand opening from that.
There will be a grand opening celebration.
And then I have another quick question, and that is, how much money-wise, if we could ban Texas or make them their own country, that would be great. That's not going to happen. So, anyway, they're busing all the immigrants from Mexico, everywhere, up here. And how is that impacting money-wise us? Or even
It's really
just-
primarily impacted financially Denver at this point. I think the folks who are coming across the border largely are eligible for refugee status, which means they, after a period of time, can get access to work authorizations. So by the time they come to Summit County, it's sort of the historical pattern that we've always seen, which is folks coming to, because we have jobs, lots of jobs, many of which don't get filled. So we're continuing to see that migratory pattern as we have in the past. It is perhaps a bit larger than it has been in the past, but it is similar. I think as Denver's human service infrastructure becomes more and more taxed, that may change. And that's certainly something we've done some planning around, we've done some thinking around. But at this point, what we are seeing are largely folks who are looking for jobs.
Last year, Texas sent 38,000 plus immigrants to Denver, and it's been very tough. I have a number of properties. I've offered my properties to homeless groups there to try and help the situation, and it's a very tough situation down there.
Oh, I bet.
It's getting worse.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, it is certainly taxing the city of Denver beyond anybody's. I mean, you think about it as a point of scale, I think there are 41,000 immigrants right now. All of Summit County is 31,000 people, right? So just as a sense of scale, it is astronomical, and I hope the federal government does what is necessary to try and create some relief for cities like Denver.
During NACO, we do have a roundtable with a lot of staffers from our federal offices, and it wasn't something that Summit County specifically asked for, but it was a topic of conversation. There was, a lot of our partner communities and on the Front Range were saying, we need more assistance, we need more help. What can your offices do? And so it's on top of mind.
What else is on folks' minds?
Nothing?
Don Squire, live over in Summit Cove. Sustainability, recycling. I invented a machine for flattening out aluminum cans, just drop it in a hole, and it's portable. And got a campaign getting ready to launch on Indiegogo, and I have a little video I can show if anybody wants to see.
That's cool.
Good email address, but yeah.
Have you talked to HC3?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was with them last summer.
Okay.
Doing their stuff to recycler, and they send people over. And it's everybody thinks it's a great thing, and once you have one you can give us, we'll use it. And where I'm at now is prototype stage. I've made a prototype, and to go to a manufacturer and have them, or if you go to what's called a DFM, design to manufacture, and they make a prototype you can go to a manufacturer with. And that's approximately $20,000. And I filed a original patent application on it, but to file a utility patent application, that's another $10,000 there. And so that's why I'm going Indiegogo and get the Facebook ads going. But, yeah, so if anybody wants to give me their email address or watch the little video. And, but yeah, you know, it's interesting because one of the first Facebook ad I put up was talking about global warming, and oh boy, some of the comments that came out of that. You're that stupid, and conspiracy, and blah, blah, blah. I took the ad down after a couple days. Very bad, yeah.
People are terrible.
Facebook's a scary place.
Yeah. Should be avoided at all costs.
Yeah, well, you see the thing in the news, you know, companies now, they're taking carbon out of the air and putting in bricks and burying it underground. Just to, you know, and a lot of people seem to think that global warming is real, and, you know, those roll-offs and those trucks pick those roll-ups off at the drop-off centers, they get 5 miles to the gallon. So my automatic machine, 2.5 times the capacity, you know, so they can make 2 trips instead of 5, empty those roll-offs out. So.
How many cans can the machine do at one time?
Oh, it basically, a little video, it shows like, put about 6 cans in a tube and just put it in a hole. And,
Very cool.
it's one at a time, but it's very fast.
You should definitely market to river runners.
Sorry?
You should definitely market
Yeah.
to river runners.
To people who
Yeah.
who boat a lot.
I digress.
I could use one of my trips. We are focusing a lot, I will say, in the county, we are focusing a lot on construction and demolition waste. That when we have done audits of our materials at the scrap, one of the biggest proponents of our waste that happens in Summit County is from construction and demolition. And so we're working on we're having a bunch of stakeholder group meetings discussing, you know, what that looks like, what would be the mechanisms in order to do that appropriately, to make it affordable and not be cost prohibitive in a process. So that's one thing that we're focusing a lot on, working with HC3 in order to kind of move that project forward. I'm trying to think.
We also rolled out the renewable energy
Yes.
mitigation. What's the P stand for?
Plan.
Partnership, maybe? I don't know. But REM, but sort of like inclusionary zoning, it's a way to collect some fees from developers to offset the cost of additional energy utilization, things like heat tape or heated sidewalks, those kinds of things. So we rolled that out last year. And then we are we're watching closely how Breckenridge and Frisco have rolled out
Pay as you throw.
Thank you, pay as you throw, and I suspect we'll have that conversation this spring, March and April. So,
I know that we are also talking about updates to building codes in order to make our buildings more green and more efficient moving in the future. Something that we're discussing quite a
I'm
bit
just
too.
gonna say it is unpopular, and I wasn't going to bring it up, but you did, Nina. Like, I think it's awesome. I think it's very, like, I'm glad we're going down this road, and I think it's very noble. I just think to this gentleman's point, when building, it costs 250 square feet versus 600 here, I just think that we need to keep that in the back of our mind. And how can we better upgrade the entire system? Like, I think that there are like fundamental flaws at the center, and so how can we invest in that infrastructure to improve the overall process and stuff? That's what I'll leave it at. Again, I agree we need to go down this road. I agree that we're not going to have a landfill in 20 years, but I think we need to be very surgical about this approach and not just, I mean, I think that going to a pinnacle versus a 1 and 2 person is very different.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot, obviously, like climate change very large existential problem,
Sure.
but is also connected to our way of life. So we have to address it in some way. And I think that we've learned, from our partners with, Breckenridge and the work that they've done beforehand. I think that we all need to be doing what we can do best. There's also a lot of new science changes, it seems like. So it's a really hard target to actually nail and hit. So I appreciate your thoughts
Yeah,
on
and
that.
that was more Blair,
Yeah.
commenting, and then the Excel comment, is like, we're all on. Like, I think it's really hard to be leaders in this space.
Yes.
And kudos to everybody who's doing that. Like, kudos to everybody in Summit County that's doing that. We need to continue to do that. It's hard work, but to be on the forefront is critical, as you said.
Absolutely.
To other stuff.
There are some other things at the scrap that, we have an issue with compostables
Yeah.
right now. You can compost food scrap, but you can't compost flatware and
Sure.
plates and stuff up here. And that's a real issue. Because most people don't realize that, and the supermarkets sell compostable wares that you can't compost. So I think at some point we need to...
When I got to the town of Silverthorne, we were buying compostable materials that we were putting in the trash.
Yeah,
Because
that's
it was a
where
lack
they
of
have to go. They have to
understanding.
go to
Right.
the trash because you can't.
And so
Up here,
again,
so-
education, you're right, is a
Yeah.
huge component.
Rob and Lynn Baird, who did the pad, used containers though. So I was just thinking now, for your plot of land, could those be used, or could that be a model instead of using timber in that, to use containers for affordable housing?
So the Larkspur is the first modular apartment building in Colorado. And the Larkspur over by the Justice Center,
Oh,
the new
okay.
apartment building.
In Breck.
In Breck. It's the first modular apartment building. It was built in a factory in Buena Vista. And it goes together like Lego blocks, right? So they build a block and then we put it on a truck and we bring it up and they put it down and then they use the crane to put another one on top. There is lots of it, and I don't know if you recently, just the other day, the state just invested another $38 million in modular development and helping to bring back a lot of the factories that closed in Colorado at the end of the recession. So there is lots going on in this sort of pre-built space. There are a number of companies on the Front Range that are now doing 3D printing, right? So you basically build all the components in a factory and then you basically just stick it together. There is a lot of work being done. I mean, at the high school, the students are now building the first tiny home, right? Which I got to go tour on Friday. It was really neat. And that tiny home, because it's not being built to our cold weather specifications, will end up serving a family in Grand Junction. But I think it's the beginning of that conversation, certainly in Summit County. So there's a lot going on in that space. A lot of new technology, a lot of innovation, a lot of money to bring the industry back to Colorado, and it's something that I could geek out about all day. I think it's fascinating. So, yeah, I mean,
it is really cool,
really cool
stuff. It's not without its challenges right now, but I think as time goes on, that's going to, be part of the future. Because you do all your construction in a climate-controlled environment, and then they get moved to the site. So, and it's really interesting that the factory down in Buena Vista, they'll have one master electrician, for example, that runs the whole project. But the guys that are actually doing the electrical installation, that's all they know. You don't have to hire people that are qualified like you would if you were up here in a home. So all a guy does all day long is every time they move a box over him, he does the same wiring. And then it gets moved, and he does the same wiring. So you can work with a less skilled group of people, which makes it easier to get subs, which is always an issue up here. So it's really cool.
we've certainly had our
issues.
challenges with the Breck project.
Yeah.
I mean, I think time-wise, there's no question that it's been faster. Money-wise, I would say we're probably even with stick-built, and what I would like to see is both cheaper and faster, right? Not just faster, but certainly, like Eric said, there have been we have learned a great deal. I
It
think,
will
from
get
this
there,
project.
though.
Yeah.
What would
I
you
mean-
say were the biggest challenges?
Well, it rained.
Fitting them together.
It rained and they leaked, and then we had to redo a bunch of things. Fitting them together, I think, was tricky.
Yeah.
You know, certainly where you store them, right? We had a great partner in Breck, but not every project will have the kind of storage you need to stage all of those boxes. Bringing it over Fremont Pass, while better than bringing it from Idaho, was still its own set of challenges.
One pass,
So-
right?
Trucking.
Yeah, exactly.
Trucking is an issue.
Is an issue for sure.
Okay.
And the
Like
cost of
certain times of year, our humidity changes so drastically up here from where that's built that like you mentioned about them fitting together, I could see that
Yeah.
humidity changes could be a huge factor.
Yeah, I have a neighbor that did a box construction in our neighborhood and had some terrible challenges. They were just not built correctly. So, but these are all things I think that will be corrected over time. I think that's really the future of attainable workforce housing for places like Summit. You know, once these things get ironed out. I mean, the factory in BV is unbelievable. It is the coolest.
It is cool.
It is the coolest thing. Just to go down and see what they do is really, it's pretty awesome. It just, you know, with any technology like that, it's going to take a little while till everything works seamlessly.
Can I throw a couple of
No.
more at you?
Sure.
Softballs?
Come on.
I get paid
Nice
by softball.
one.
Unless anybody else has questions.
Anybody else? Anyone else?
Any real people. Two things. One is, could you guys talk about the ADU program a little bit more specifically, especially with Nellie's neighborhood across the street? And then the other thing is maybe update folks on the comp plan.
Yeah. I'll do ADUs.
Those are both
if
yours.
somebody else wants
I'll
to.
take
So ADUs, like I said, we started by changing all of our zoning to make it easier for folks to build accessory dwelling units on their properties. We changed setbacks and height restrictions and all the things. That was sort of part A of the approach. Part B was what we call lending library. And we're just about to roll this out. But if you want to put an ADU on your property, we are trying to find ways to make that less expensive so that when you do, you can recoup what your investment is through rent. So the first thing we did was contract a firm out of California to build 5 stock plans. So you can now go into our planning department, pick one of those 5 plans, do the site work that's involved, and then get that plan wet stamped for your property within 7 to 10 days. So this removes all of your cost of hiring an architect. It also removes the wait for hiring an architect. Most of the architects coming out of COVID still had about a year wait list, and so this takes some time off the process. So that was sort of the second phase. The third phase is a grant program. So if you agree to rent that property after it's constructed at a certain AMI, we will give you up to $75,000, I think it is, towards the construction. That can be used for tap fees, that can be used for the actual construction. It can be used in any way that you want, as long as you agree to a deed restriction at a certain AMI. So the lower AMI you're willing to agree to, that's area median income, the more money you'll get for your property. I think looking past those that we've already done, to Jan's question about modular, we will probably also look at some kind of a sort of pre-built approach where we contract with someone to make it cheaper for folks who want to use that pre-built ADU, right? So if, for example, there are a lot of companies in Denver right now that are building pre-built ADUs. We would contract with them, and if you as a homeowner want to put one of those on your property, you can go directly to that company and get a subsidized rate, and then work with them to bring it to your community. So I think that's what we will look at sort of next year once we've rolled out these initial 3 pieces. Since we changed our zoning, we've actually seen a 400% increase in ADU applications. And I like to say every unit counts. So while that's still not, I think, the goal we'd like to be at, there are a number of new units that have been built just through our zoning. And then last year, we allocated about $500,000 to that grant program. All of it was spent, I think we allocated it in August, and all of it was spent before the end of the year. So there's a lot of interest in this program. This year, we've allocated $750,000. I don't know where we are in spending all that money, but I expect that it will go pretty quickly because there is so much interest.
Kudos, love that program. I think
Thank
it's
you.
one of the best programs that you guys have out there. And all I'll say to that is I highly encourage you to look at Frisco's home improvement program.
Yeah.
Just coming from a local who lives on Ptarmigan and watch it, literally can lie in bed and watch myself heat the outdoors, watch the heat waves come off
Yeah.
the side of my house. I can't afford to, I mean, really, I can't afford to put a new roof on my house, and a program like that would be
Yeah.
extremely helpful.
Yeah, I definitely think it's something we'll want to look at as well. Yep.
The comprehensive plan. So we are in our second phase of the comprehensive plan that will basically shape and meld the future of Summit County. We've done a first group of stakeholder process, and now we're moving into the second phase in which we're starting to find selective groups that we might not have gathered in that first initial process. So we're doing surveys. I know that we're working with Mountain Dreamers in order to do a little bit more deeper dives. There's another nonprofit group that I'm forgetting right now that we're partnering with. It's not staying in Summit. I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but we are looking at, okay, where did our data not reach, you know, the matching demographics that we are aware of in Summit County, and now we're starting to kind of reach out to those groups to help us build that plan for the future. So if you haven't taken your survey, it's on our website. It's kind of all over. We have it on our social medias. Please do, you know, give us some feedback. It's very detailed. They have a cool mapping tool where you can go on and like select different areas, trailheads, things that you want to note, so that we can better serve our community.
If I've got thoughts, I'll just share it with you later.
Okay.
I mean, we haven't updated our comp plan in 18 years at the
Yeah.
county. It really is the foundational document for all of our planning and zoning, all of the decisions we make around affordable housing, pretty much everything we do really. So we very much encourage you all to engage in that process and tell us what your priorities are for our community moving forward. We've certainly heard a lot about affordable housing. We've heard a lot about how, as a community, we can be more sustainable, both in terms of livability and also in terms of climate. From a lot of folks, we've heard a lot of desire for better balance between our tourism industry and the folks that live here year-round, full-time, but
Open
also
space, too.
a lot of desire for open space and for us continuing to make investments in that area. So, really important document that we will spend a lot of time on, and would love to have as many people. I think we've had over 1,000 people engage at this point, which is great, but there's always more. So if you haven't yet, definitely encourage you to.
The middle schoolers are really taking it away. They're giving us a lot of feedback. So
That was my biggest concern. You went there, you keep going there and opening it up for me, Nina.
yeah.
I feel like that's what we've heard, right, from the sessions that I've sat in, is that those kids in middle school are worried about where they're going to live and how they're going to stay in Summit into the future. And so just thinking of the conversations that we've had, Commissioner Pogue, about we're not going to necessarily build ourselves out of this problem.
No.
Please, I do not expect an answer to this, but what does the long-term future of this community look like? How do we create generational wealth when we're putting people through these affordable or attainable housing programs? You know, just how do we, what does this look like in 50 years, you know? And how do those kids come, how do we send them off to college and bring them back and grow wages? And anyway, again, do not expect an answer, but that's what my thought was.
Well, I mean, I think that's really the heart of what we all think about every time we're making a decision, and we've really weighed that question in a number of different ways. I mean, certainly the support of Summit Economic Partnership as an opportunity to look at how we might diversify into, or develop some higher paid jobs in Summit County. That has been a focus. Certainly in terms of housing, the fact that we have a multi-pronged approach that doesn't just look at building, but also looks at how we convert what we already have has been a focus. Certainly the conversations around extending the life of the landfill are part of that. So I think there is no one right answer, but it is something that I think all of us weigh heavily in every decision that we make.
And it's gotten harder. I mean, when the Wellington was built, the whole thought was, you buy in the you rent,
There's
you
the
buy in
ladder.
a Wellington, and then you can afford something down the street, and
Sure.
you can afford, well, that whole 5 rungs in the middle of that ladder are gone. They don't exist anymore just because of the way the county is built. The problem is for local governments and all local governments, there's very little you can do other than through incentive to keep people from building $5 million homes. You can go and talk to a developer about giving some land. In general, it's really just doesn't really work for most of them because there's no money in that for them. And land is such a high commodity item right now that to go to a developer and say, without having some legal avenue to say, hey, as part of your development, you need to give us this, to just go to a developer and say, hey, how about you just spin off a lot for us? Well, in their mind, that lot is worth, $3 million, not the, $250,000 that they're going to realize from putting a couple tiny homes on. So that's our problem. You can either do it through legislation or the hammer of justice, but then that's when you get the letters to the editor that you guys suck because you're taking my short-term rental away. So it's hard. It's a hard position to be in, to try to balance what the three of us feel. The soul of the community is probably the most important thing that we deal with all the time, and that's keeping kids, the Tatro boys, the Aherns, people like that have grown up here, that are now adults, that are raising kids here. You want to recreate that for generations to come. In a place like this, it has become very, very difficult. And the pushback from the second home community about us doing that is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And I know that firsthand from our STR conversations, both at the county and at the town of Breck. The vitriol of what we were doing to these poor second homeowners was amazing. So
It's very interesting because I agree so much, but it's like we kind of taper our approach to some of these regulations or whatever we do, and for some groups of people that's not enough. We need to do more, and then for some groups, a large group or a very vocal group, that's too much.
So y'all are not going to please everyone.
So we're not going to please everyone, but I think that is, like they just said, the soul of this community is at the heart of what we do, what we're trying to weigh every single day. And, that's why these comprehensive plans, like your engagement, is so important. It's so critical. Telling us what you want is so much more important. And then telling us when we do a good job and that you like that we're doing what we're doing, that also helps too. Because we get a lot of hate mail, and luckily we all have really thick skin. We're all crocodiles, and we let that stuff run off our backs. But it's really encouraging to know that the policies and things that we're putting into place are appreciated and that they are working well, or they're not working, and we need to, change. We're all adaptable and willing to do that. I don't think any of us would say no, that's not, we know what's best. And so, it's a balance though. It's obviously a balance. No one's denying that we're not a tourism driven economy. No one denies that. But I think that we are hearing very differing opinions on how much tourism is too much. And that's the question.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've been reading the paper, so I'm not sure if I get the whole picture on this thing, but is there talk on real estate tax abatement or reduction for a property that's a long-term rental?
Yeah, this is something I've worked really hard on.
This is tomorrow.
Counties historically have not had any ability to give property tax rebates. And every conversation we had about how do you equalize short-term rentals and long-term rentals, it comes down to money. And so I approached Senator Roberts at the beginning, sort of in the summer, about giving counties a broad ability to do property tax rebates. One of the ways that I would like to use this tool, and I think there's agreement on this in the BOCC, is to give long-term renters incentives or a property tax rebate to help equalize that economic disparity. So we've made it through the Senate at this point. It has made it with complete support, bipartisan support through the first House committee, and now we're just waiting for the final House vote on the floor.
Is that like Senate Bill 33 or something?
No, that is the short-term rental commercial taxation bill. This is Senate Bill 2. Yeah, so I'm really excited to have this tool, and we've kept it pretty broad, so there may be some other ways we want to use it. Like, for example, we could do a rebate for in-home childcare providers to offset some of their operating costs. I know that the folks on the Eastern Plains really want to use it to give incentives to behavioral health providers because they have a desert of providers. So I think you'll see a lot of different, it's a, a way to do targeted property tax relief as best suits a county's economy.
And that was House Bill,
That was Senate Bill 2.
Senate Bill 2.
Yep, and both the Speaker and Senator Roberts are sponsors.
So if you can write a letter or call,
Yes,
that would be very helpful.
It would be.
So if you can call Dylan's office or Julie McCluskey's office as this moves into the House, that kind of stuff's really important. They really do like to listen to engaged citizens, and that really helps. I mean, Tamara's done the lion's share of the job on this one. It'd be great to get some community help for her at that level. This one's a big deal.
I can tell you personally, both Senator Roberts and Julie McCluskey are responsive to the emails that they receive.
Yeah.
So
Very
if you can just say, great, get this through, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, Senator Roberts has done an incredible amount of work on it, and so I think for either of them, particularly for him, hearing this is great would be awesome.
Yes.
For sure. All right, any other questions?
Well, I'll close it. I think the county is well poised to take our plastics banning, single-use plastic banning to the next level. Okay, Breckenridge already taken a strong approach. Frisco starts July 1st, I believe. I think that we could gather some momentum on this type of thing and send a clear message to the plastics industry that something has to be done.
They're already starting to respond. It's pretty interesting. Large companies like that you think would be slow to react, they smell the wind. They see what's coming. I mean, there was a bill at the state that didn't allow municipalities to enact plastics ban because at some point the plastics industry had gotten to the legislature. That has since been reversed by a legislature, and that's why that is it July 1st, Tom? That's why that July 1st date is the date that both Breck and Frisco are doing it, because that's the date that the legislation goes into effect to allow municipalities to ban plastics. There's been some places like Aspen that have done it and have waited for a lawsuit that I don't think it ever came, but already, I would say 12, 18 months ago, I couldn't buy water in anything but a plastic bottle for the restaurant. And all of a sudden, it's available in aluminum. We looked at all these other options with these small companies like Mananalu for the town of Breck. And as we were looking at that, all of a sudden, Aquafina comes in an aluminum bottle. So these guys do not snooze on, on what they think is their rightful place in the market. And I think just little communities, especially little forward-facing communities that a lot of people get to see what we're doing, a lot of tourists come through and get to see what we're doing. That's how I think you affect industry like that. So